and welcome to our webinar MBA interviews, do's and don'ts. My name is Nelly and I'll be the moderator on behalf of My Prep team today. I'm here with Shimri Winters, who is a London Business School graduate, and he's a former member of the London Business School interviewing committee. Shimri is also the head of ARINGO MBA admission consultancy firm, and he has worked with hundreds of MBA applicants, helping them to get into their dream school. So I think we have the perfect person here today. I'm very happy to have Shimri. I hope that you enjoy this webinar. Please ask questions anytime during the session, just using the chat and the Q&A box, and we'll take time to answer at the end. Welcome, Shimri. I'm giving the word to you now.
Okay, thank you, Nelly, and thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here and excited to talk about MBA interviews. So let's start. A word about myself. My name is Shimri Winters. As Nelly said, I'm a London Business School graduate. I was on the interviewing committee for 7 years. And in the last 8 years, I've been working at ARINGO MBA Admissions Consulting. This is my only marketing slide, I think, not very marketing. But ARINGO helps candidates from all over the world get into top MBA programs. How do we do it? We first give some advice about which schools you could probably get into, which are maybe over your reach, what kind of GMAT scores you would need, and then the project plan for the next year or two before you apply. And we help with the entire application process. Check us out on aringo.com. Yeah, we have great stats. That was my marketing slide. I'm very good at marketing. Okay, so let's talk about the agenda. And the main focus of this presentation is the interview. But it's hard to jump into the interview stage, which is kind of stage 3, without talking about stage 1, which is, what's an MBA and, why do a top MBA? And maybe stage 2 a bit, which is the application itself. So I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes running through a lot of topics which are all concerned with why MBA, what is a top MBA, which are the top schools, how much does it cost, where do you work, should you do an MBA, what are schools looking for, etc. I'm going to run very, very quickly with that. And then the second half of this presentation, we'll talk about MBA interviews. So you'll hear me, I'm going to talk very quickly, so just so we cover a lot of topics. Like Nelly said, there's a little Q&A section or chat, and you can ask me questions as we go along or at the end of this presentation. If you don't have any questions at this stage, let's start. So these are the slides I'm going to run through very quickly. Why do a top 10 MBA program? Most of my candidates are looking to switch their careers. I work with a lot of lawyers, accountants, programmers, and they want to switch their careers. One way to do it is to do it via an MBA, which opens various opportunities. Of course, there are accelerators. There are people who are very happy in their career and want to stay in their industry and just get an edge over their peers and want to accelerate in the same industry. And also a lot of future entrepreneurs that don't know exactly what they want to do, but they know they want to open a startup in the future, and an MBA can give them those tools. I also like to say kind of me time. An MBA is a full-time, top MBA is a full-time program. Gives you a lot of tools to kind of understand what's important to you. And a lot of people don't know what they want to do when they grow up. And an MBA can give them those tools. Okay, so that's why to do an MBA. Of course, there's empiric reasons like very high salaries. I'll show you them at the end. Great careers. I'll show you the employers. And most of top MBA programs are abroad, international. So it can be in the US, it can be in Asia, it can be in Canada, it can be in Europe. And definitely a great opportunity to go and study internationally. And also it opens prospects to work internationally. So it's a great idea if you think about an MBA. A lot of people say, what are the top MBA programs? Okay, maybe I've heard of Harvard or Oxford, but these top or not top. So their answer is there's lots of top MBA programs. And if I had to choose or put in a list the top 10 programs, I would probably get to 30, 35 programs. And the reason is there's just lots and lots of rankings. So do I look at the Economist ranking or do I look at the US News ranking? And I will see there some schools will be in both rankings, but some schools will only be in one of them in the top 10 places. So there's lots of top 10 schools. I like to look at the Financial Times MBA ranking for Europe and the US News MBA ranking for the US, but that doesn't mean that the other rankings aren't important. So just remember there's lots of top schools, and there's more than 10 in the top 10. Just to give you some names, I think if we look at Europe, a lot of people know London Business School and INSEAD. I think they're kind of considered as the top two in Europe. INSEAD also has a campus in Singapore for full-time MBA programs. Both of these schools also have campuses in Dubai for executive MBA. There's some more schools as well, which are all very good, ranked top 10. If it's HEC Paris or IES Barcelona or Oxford or Cambridge. So there's lots of good schools in Europe. In the US, there's lots and lots of good schools, and I only put here 15, but I could have put here 20. I think most of us know these brands, even a bit better than the European brands. So, and if we compare between Europe and the US, well, I think that's one factor. You know, most people say, I only want to go to a top school, and I've never heard of IES Barcelona. That's okay, but the employers and whoever needs to hear about IES Barcelona does. The reason that you've heard of Duke or UCLA is because these American schools are very big and famous in everything. So I know nothing about being a dentist, but I'm sure Cornell are very good at teaching medicine and being a dentist. And literature, I'm sure Columbia are good at that. So the big schools are big in everything. There's a lot of Hollywood movies where the son of the hero goes to college or something. And the European schools are very small. They usually only teach MBA programs, which is why you may have not heard of the brand, but it's very strong. Another big differentiator is the European schools are very international, where the US schools, there's a lot of Americans. Okay. And one last big differentiator between the European schools and the US schools are the length of the program, where the US schools are 2 years, usually, and the European schools are between 1 and 1.5 years. So this is something you should consider. When people ask me, okay, how do I choose where to study? Well, the first thing is location. Again, like we were talking about Europe versus US. Same thing with New York versus San Francisco. The Berkeley and NYU will probably teach very similar curriculum, but a very big difference is the location. This is outside San Francisco and this is in Manhattan. That's a big difference. So where would you like to live? Where would you like to study location-wise? Second thing is definitely school ranking. I think this is important. The third might be the cost of the program. Maybe you can get a scholarship somewhere. Maybe a certain program is cheaper, is shorter, etc. There's other considerations as well, of course, culture and recruiters, etc. But they're more specific. Again, I would probably look at location, ranking, and a bit about the cost. That's how I choose. Okay, again, I'm running in this. I'm not asking you to ask me questions because this isn't the topic. It's just giving you general information. We have about 4 or 5 more slides of general information. So how much does an MBA cost? A lot. A top MBA program can cost $60,000, $70,000 and times per year, times that took 2 because the MBAs in the US are 2 years. Add living expenses, etc. $200,000, $250,000 easily the cost of a 2-year MBA program plus expenses. A 1-year program in Europe would probably cost 100,000 euros or a bit more, including expenses, because the program is shorter. Yes, the return on investment in Europe will be much quicker because you probably start working after 1 year, not 2. There's lots of scholarships in all the programs. A lot of people tell me, okay, which program is best for scholarships? I do have my favorite, but all programs have scholarships. I think last year we had something like 16 or 17 clients who got full scholarships. Then we had quite a few clients who got $80,000 to $100,000 scholarships, and just over 50% got something. Something can be 20, 30, 40, $50,000. So there's lots and lots of scholarships. And again, if your consideration is a high scholarship, talk to me or an expert that can tell you which programs are suited for you with your criteria. It costs a lot of money, but you can also make a lot of money. And these are the average salaries as of 3 years ago, which were published. And these are the basic salaries without stock options, without bonuses, without raises, without special things. and there are all those other things. So the salaries are very high. The salaries in Europe are also very high. So that's a bit about how much you earn. And this is a bit about where you work. And again, there's lots and lots of top. This is a slide I took from London Business School. And as you can see, most of the companies here are international, but we could call them American. Okay, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. And definitely the same recruiters would come to the UK, in this case to London Business School, that would probably come to Columbia. Okay, and I think the biggest recruiter at Columbia this year was McKinsey, and again the largest recruiter at London Business School was also McKinsey, if I remember correctly. So very similar. I think the second one was Amazon. So in both schools, so again very similar recruiters, similar opportunities, and that goes back a bit to how do you decide? Mainly the location. It's not a certain place you think your career would be better. Again, we're very near to the topic of this presentation, which is the interviews. This is when you need to apply. So all the schools have or most of the schools have rounds, where usually round one, the first round, would be 1 year before the studies. So the studies start in September 2023. You would really want to apply in September 22, but you could also apply in round 2 or 3. My rule of thumb is just be careful from the last round. So if a school has 3 rounds, try and apply in the first or in the second if you're not ready in the first, but stay away from the third. Okay, you need to have a very good reason to apply in the last round. Some very, very few schools are still open this year. And that's it. Okay, so someone asked if I don't look, answering, if I don't look at the school ranking, why wouldn't I? What's a good criteria for the school? What's the criteria? Well, look at the other two. One is, where is the location? Do you want to live in Paris or do you want to live in Madrid? Do you want to live in LA or do you want to live in Chicago? Do you want a big town or small town? And second one is, how much does the program cost you? There's other considerations as well. Where do you want to work after the program? With a high chance that the US programs will lead to a US job. Again, it's not 100%, but 98%. And with a high chance, not 90%, but a 50% chance, that the European MBA will lead to a European job and not a US one or Canadian. So again, this all goes back to location. Okay. 1 or 2 programs still have deadlines this year. We said that. Okay. Let's do this. I think this is 2 slides to go before the interview stuff. What are schools looking for? Again, this is a bit for advanced people on this presentation, but I will actually start with the next slide and then I'll go back to this. What do you need to apply? Well, you need your CV and you need to write essays and you need good recommendations. So that's the application itself. The prerequisites are usually a GMAT score or a GRE, which is a psychometric test, quite difficult. A TOEFL for someone who English is not their, they don't live in an English-speaking country or their degree wasn't English. And obviously, for most programs, you need an undergraduate degree. If you show all of these, then the school will, if you have all of these prerequisites, the school will read your application and will probably look for these things that are described here. I can quickly start with the purple and go clockwise. They will look at your academics, mainly at your GMAT or GRE, but also at your undergraduate degree. They will look for candidates who have a vision, that they know why MBA, why now, what are your short-term, long-term career goals, things like that. They really want to see that you have a vision. Schools look for school interest. That means you can't copy and paste your Columbia application to Harvard. You need to talk about why Harvard, because Harvard will be interested to know why do you want to come to them. If you have managerial experience or entrepreneurship experience, schools love that. If you have international exposure, if you worked abroad, lived abroad, traveled abroad, or just work with international teams, a lot of the programs, especially the European ones, will really value that. And of course, if you're, if you're smart, they will be looking for this kind of thing. Hard to prove, I know, but they'll be looking for that. And I like the yellow one the most. When I used to interview for London Business School, I used to look for 3 things. Yes, academic, professional. Okay, what did you do in your professional career? and also something else. I don't know what that something else is, this broad horizons. Maybe you volunteer, maybe you have a nice hobby, maybe you're just a very nice person that tells jokes. But usually schools look for that extra thing. So again, it takes a long time to do these applications. You can see there's a lot of documents that need to be submitted. And the process is this. You have to fill in your online application with all the things that we described above, and then you submit your application according to the deadlines that I showed you before. Once you submit your application, you can go to the beach or go for a nice ski holiday or just sit at home and bite your nails for a few weeks. It does take a few weeks, usually between 3 to 6, but it depends on the school. And after 3 to 6 weeks, usually, you will get a notification from the school if you've passed to the next stage. If you've passed to the next stage, to the interview stage, first of all, you should be excited because this is a big deal. The school has screened hundreds or thousands of applicants and they've decided to call you on for an interview. This, in some schools, this is 1 out of 2. In some schools, this is 1 out of 4. In some schools, this is 1 out of 8. Okay, so you've been selected for an interview. This is a big deal. Okay, so well done to get to this stage. And that's the stage we're going to discuss. And then just continuing the process, you do the interview, and then you wait another 3 to 6 weeks, depending on which school. And then you hear your final offer. And you can hear that you've been selected, you can be rejected. There's also a not very nice option of waitlist where the school says, you know what, we're not sure, wait 3 months, but that's another horrible thing. Okay, so we've reached in 17 minutes, I'm not bad, the MBA interview stage. That means I have a sip of my coffee. And we said the majority of this presentation will discuss the interviews. So we said you've been screened, and now you've been chosen for an interview. Who conducts this interview? It really depends on the school, depends on the year, depends on the situation. It could be an AdCom member, an admission committee member, someone who works at the school. I've mainly had this, for example, with Harvard. If you get selected to be interviewed by Harvard, usually your interviewer will be working at the school. Tomorrow I have a candidate who's interviewing at ESS, same thing. She is interviewing with a member of the admissions board at ESS. Some schools use second year students or maybe even first year students. I've had this year in many schools, mainly in the US, like Darden, Chicago, Kellogg, where second year students interviewed my candidates. It was a bit strange. Sometimes these second year students had less experience than the candidates. Maybe they were younger, but still, that's how it works. And in most of the top schools, again, depends which, etc., but in most, alumni will be the interviewers. And in some schools like NCAD or HSE, there's 2 interviews by 2 alumni. In some schools, there's 1 interview like London Business School or Stanford. So it really depends. But I'm just going to address, all these interviews as just the interview for now. There's also different types of interviews. There's now a more and more popular video interview or some kind of supplement video interview, which is a bit different. There's a case presentation in some schools. There's a team-based discussion of Wharton, which is very strange. So there's all different types. I'm not going to address any of those. That's a whole new topic. But what I will address is the face-to-face interview. So we said this is a mandatory component of the MBA application. And the face-to-face interview in previous years used to be really face-to-face. In the last 2 or 3 years, Zoom has controlled our world. And a lot of the interviews have, or all the interviews moved to Zoom. Right now, they're coming back to face-to-face. Face-to-face isn't necessarily on campus because it can be just with an alumni in a local coffee shop or in a local cafe or in his office or on Zoom or whatever. So there's lots and lots of options here for face-to-face or Zoom. But again, I'm just going to, we've all gotten used to working in Zoom. I'm just going to address them as the same, although, I don't know, maybe need nicer trousers if it's face-to-face versus Zoom. But basically it's the same. Okay, so all that was the beginning for this next few do's and don'ts for them. And remember, you can keep asking questions if you want, and I'll also answer questions at the end of this presentation. Now I'm slowing down a bit because this is the main. So you received the interview, yay! First of all, yes, you should celebrate. It's a big deal. Second of all, I know it sounds strange, read the instructions. Sometimes the instructions are you need to fill out something before the interview. Some schools, Chicago, MIT, have additional essays they want you to send. Some schools will ask you for an additional reference. Some schools will ask you to fill out something within some kind of timeline. Some schools will send you the interviewer name and tell you you need to chase him or her for the interview. You need to schedule your interview with this alumni, with this alumnus. So just read the instructions carefully. Obviously, then schedule the interview. Makes sense. Some people ask me, do I have to schedule? Does it matter what slot? Should I try and schedule it as early as possible, as late as possible? Who cares? Okay, it's all the same. I know that. I know you're under pressure. You're not sure what to do. Forget all the myths, etc. Schedule an interview for a time that works for you. Schedule the interview in a place that works for you, and you be at your best. Don't let the other things worry you too much. I know it sounds strange, but when I used to interview for London Business School, and I used to get the name of someone that I need to interview, I used to Google them, probably LinkedIn them, and just check your own online presence for 1 second in case someone checks you out on Google, and maybe delete some things or change some things or make sure they're aligned to your CV. Otherwise, that's pretty strange. It's completely okay to research your interviewer. You can go on LinkedIn and research the interviewer, can even send them a friend request. That's absolutely fine. And start preparing for the interview. And we'll talk about that. Okay, that's the next slide. So someone asked on the questions if they had to choose between a physical or online interview, what is best? Their answer is, it really depends on you. Okay, so some people have a very strong physical presence. They usually also have a very strong online presence, I have to admit. And they have a lot of confidence, and they can come into the room and dominate it, and not in a bad way, in a good way. And for they smile a lot, they're likable, and for them, yeah, physical is great. If someone is a bit less has a bit less confidence, maybe an online is a bit easier. Maybe you can fake it, so you make it a bit on the online a bit more. Maybe you can kind of hide some notes on your laptop. So if you're lacking a bit of confidence, maybe online is a bit better for you. But again, it's not necessarily your choice, because usually the interviews until 2 years ago, until the pandemic began, were face-to-face. There was no choice. And in the last 2 years have been online, no choice. So it's not necessarily up to you what to choose, but again, you need to decide where you think you can be stronger. Okay, let's look a bit about the questions. I'm just saying the very, very obvious things, like don't be late, close your phone. Okay, that's very obvious, but people do that. I had a very strange, something happened very strange 2 years ago. I had a client who he didn't admit to this, but he was a bit rude to the interviewer. When I say rude, it wasn't rude, but he said kind of thing like, "Hi, interviewer, I got your name. I need to schedule the interview with you. I'm only available next Wednesday between 12 to 3. Okay, I mean, that's not very rude, but I have to admit that I just know the interviewer, I just know the candidate, and she actually approached me and asked me, "Is this your candidate?" Because I find that a bit offensive or rude or something like that. And obviously, I didn't tell him I spoke to her, and I didn't tell her I spoke to him. But just respect the interviewer, respect their time. Don't say I'm available next Wednesday between 3 to 4. If you're away this week, or if you just need a few days to prepare, it's fine to say to the interview, "Listen, I have a huge project deliverable this week. I can make it any day, any time next week." That's fine. That's very, that's being flexible. I wrote here, truth wins. I have to admit that the interview it's hard to bluff sometimes an interviewer. And if they find you lying, that's it. That's the end of your interview. So try and be honest. with the interviewer more than you probably were in the written application. If you have, if there is something a bit bad, if there was a gap of a few months or something like that, this is, and you're asked about it, you don't need to volunteer anything, but if you're asked, definitely just come out with the truth. There's no reason to start lying or saying something which can be discovered. Be positive, always try and have a positive message. Even if you're asked what's your biggest failure or something like that, always try and be positive. And we'll talk about that soon, but you can always say what you learned from that failure, etc. Be prepared, and we'll talk about the big 9 in the slide, and give a lot of examples. Now, I didn't write this down, but a typical length of an answer, except walk me through your resume, which is probably 3 minutes, a typical length of an answer can be 1 to 1.5 minutes. And that is long. So for example, if someone asks you, what would your boss say about you? The answer isn't, he would say I'm great. No, what about the other 56 seconds? He would say I'm great. In the last review meeting we had, he suggested I'm very strong in 3 or 4 things. He also gave me 2, give an example of every answer. Okay. Yes, so someone asked on the chat about the common mistakes, and in 3 slides or 4 slides, I have a slide which is called common mistakes. So ARINGO has worked with thousands of candidates, and each candidate sometimes works on a number of schools. So I think we've probably had tens of thousands of candidates that are interviewing. Sorry, coffee. And these are the 9 common questions that we've seen. So again, regardless if you're being interviewed by an alumnus, student, adcom, whatever, these are the questions that I expect you to receive at least some of these, I don't know, 6 out of these 9 in every interview. And the first one would be, walk me through your resume. That makes sense. I don't know you, even if I've received your application. I want to hear you. I want to hear your story. By the way, every question like this can be asked a bit different, and maybe you can answer it a bit differently, like, tell me about yourself. Is that the same question, different? We'll answer these questions. Usually, or most times, you'll be asked about, why do you even want to do an MBA? Why do you want to do an MBA now? This stage, you're very successful. Why do you need an MBA? Why do you want to come to our program? There's a nice slogan here of New York University. So, why Stern? Why aren't you applying to Columbia? And they would, if a Stern, NYU Stern alumnus is interviewing you, you better have a good reason why Stern. Because if you say, well, I'm also applying to Columbia, but Stern's my second choice, interview is finished. Okay, so you need a good reason why Stern. And short-term, long-term career goals, very clear. And strengths, weaknesses, that's like an obvious one. I think you have that kind of in regular interviews, not just MBA interviews. And this I don't like. This is an unfair question. I've seen it a lot at Cornell. Sorry, Cornell. So they ask a lot of times, what should the adcoms, what should the committee be worried about? And you need to kind of give an answer, something like a weakness kind of thing. And usually the interview finishes with, okay, it's finished. Do you have any questions to me? Well, you should prepare one. Okay, so you're asking me on the chat, can I give a good tip about strengths and weaknesses? Yes, I don't think I have a slide on that, but let me answer that in 2 slides. Okay, but I will answer that. Okay, so that's, like we said, the most common question is, walk me through your resume. And it's not just the most common question, it would be the most common first question. And usually, if you're not asked this question in the first 1 or 2 questions, well, you probably won't be asked this. So it's always good to rehearse your story. Go in front of the mirror, rehearse your story. Something like 3 minutes is fine. I remember once I did some prep with someone and I asked him, tell me about yourself or walk me through your CV. And he was talking for like 26 minutes. I think I stopped him. So that's way too long, obviously. But on the other hand, don't be too short with this, because this kind of lays the ground for additional and further questions and digging into your profile. There's no right or wrong rule here. I've seen it all. So I've seen chronological order, and I personally I like this order, although most of my colleagues prefer reverse chronological order. So it really doesn't matter. A chronological order would say, okay, if nothing interesting happened till 18, what could be interesting? Maybe you lived in 4 countries by the time you were 18. That's interesting. But if you weren't the world champion in chess and didn't live in more than one place, so maybe that's less important. So you can just say, okay, let me start at 18, when I graduated from high school, I had good grades, you could say that. And I decided to go to university, and I decided what I wanted to study, and it was law because I thought law would give me a good foundation for business. At university, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, volunteered, I had great grades, and I had 2 internships throughout university, which landed me a full-time position in a law firm. Then I worked in 2 law firms in the last 4 years. I was promoted twice, and my current job is senior associate in a global law firm in China, whatever. Yes, so this is my work part. On a personal perspective, I live in Beijing, and I love cooking, traveling, and squash. Okay, so that's a good answer. Again, I said it a bit too quick, but it takes around 3 minutes. Start at 18 at university or something, if there was something interested before, talk about university, work, maybe 1 or 2 lines of personal, that's it. You could go reverse chronologically. So like, hi, my name is Shimri, I'm 28 years old. I work as an associate in an international law firm in Beijing. I've been there for 2 years. 2 years ago, I worked in another law firm before I was approached by this one as a junior associate. Before that, I studied law, and that's it. In my personal life, I like running and traveling. Okay, so you could do that as well. And I've seen it done, you can start with your current job, then go chronologically. Okay, I'm 28, I work as a lawyer. Let me tell you about my career at 18. I start, okay, fine. As long as you're consistent, okay? I'm not too worried about the order of things. There's no right or wrong. Don't ask me in the Q&A. There's no right or wrong. It's all good. Definitely focus on the motivation. So they can see in your resume that you've moved from job to job, but explain why. Okay, don't just say, okay, so after 2 years I moved. No, after 2 years I had the opportunity, I was headhunted, I decided the learning has finished in this position and it would take me 8 years to get promoted, so I moved to another company. Give the motivation of moving from company. And bonus points, if you can, is kind of finish with why MBA and just something like, and now I'm here looking for my next challenge, which is an MBA, something like that, okay, which would probably bring the interviewer to ask you, okay, so why MBA? That's like a bonus point. So the next question would probably be, okay, so why MBA? And here again, just think about 3, 4 reasons. And the reasons can be very general, I want to strengthen my business education foundation, something like that. And they can be very specific. I have a family business. I want to move back in 2 years. I need to gain more experience. I need to gain more knowledge. I want some international experience. You can say, I want to open my own startup. I feel like I'm missing certain things, etc. So just think of 3 or 4 reasons. It can be generic. Don't worry about that too much, as long as they make sense to your story. Remember that all the schools will look for why us, why my school. And this is very important. This, needs not just talking in front of the mirror, practicing, but this needs a bit of research. Hopefully you can speak to some students, alumni, professors, go online, see YouTubes, go on the school website, go to webinars, go to MBA fairs, speak to someone from the school and mention this when you say why MBA, why our school, why Stern? Well, I've spoken to students, I've spoken to alumni, I went on an MBA fair, I spoke to so many schools. Stern was the school that gave me the most sense that the students work in a collaborative manner. The tech is very strong there. My girlfriend wants to live in New York, and that's why Stern is my number 1 choice. Okay, now girlfriend lives in New York. Yeah, that's a good reason. Okay, why Stern and why not MIT? Okay, but obviously you need some more reasons why Stern. So again, culture, location, something specific about the school, things like that. That would be great. Okay, so moving on, and these stories would be kind of greatest achievement, the greatest failure. So now I'm answering your question that you asked in the chat about biggest achievement or biggest failure. How do you answer this? So my first suggestion is practice. My second suggestion is practice according to a specific structure. You can Google star answer structure, but here I'll give you my Shimri structure, which is very similar. And when I mean structure, I mean every story, failure, achievement, I'll give an example soon, has a background. Okay, the interviewer doesn't work with you. He might not know this industry. He doesn't know what you do on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so again, if you're asked what your biggest achievement is, you can't just say, well, you know, I sold to Microsoft $12 million. Is that good? Bad? It sounds good, but I don't really know. So if that's your biggest achievement, try and tell the story. Okay, instead of Shimri structure, I used to call it the Hollywood structure. Okay, make it interesting. So every story has a background. Okay, so the background was our biggest client is Amazon, but I decided we need to find more clients and I approached Microsoft. Let's make it more complicated, otherwise it's not Hollywood. The problem with Microsoft was they used to work with us a few years ago, but they hate us because something went wrong in the communication and they didn't like my predecessor or something. I don't really know, I'm making this up. So that's the complication. What did I do? Well, first of all, I decided I want to pick up these communication failures, and I approached a couple of different departments at Microsoft and introduced myself and asked them for a coffee, asked to meet them for coffee. Then I explained that I'm new. I know we used to have good relationships, but I know they failed. I think it's from personal reasons, but I'm not exactly sure. Can they tell me about their experiences with our company? Do they know the newest products of our company? Would they be interested to hear more? Then I found the key stakeholders and I convinced them to buy our products. Wow, amazing. What was the quantifiable result? I sold $12 million. My boss was very happy, and let's add to my success. My boss was very happy. I got a huge bonus, and the client actually called the partners of my company to say how great I am. Wow, I'm really good. So that's a good Hollywood structure. By the way, you can use it the same for failure stories. Okay, so when I arrived to my company, I was given 10 tasks by my manager. I didn't know how to split up my time, so I gave them roughly 10% of my time for each of the tasks. What was the problem? My manager called me 2 weeks later and said, hey, what's happening with our biggest, most important client? You've only put 10% of your time in him. You should have put 50%. He forgot to tell me that at the beginning, but minor detail. What did I do? First of all, I thanked my manager for the feedback. I started working more and more on this important client. I decided to have more frequent meetings with my manager every 2 days for him to be able to give me more feedback. I decided to see what my colleagues were doing with their time management. I split up my tasks completely differently, prioritizing the most important clients. And today I'm a whiz at time management, and I can actually take 12 clients versus my peers who only work on 10. That's and I got my manager told me I'm great. The client was very happy, and some other quantifiable results. What did I learn from this? More communication with my managers, working on my time better, project management skills better, whatever. So even a failure story, first of all, I showed that I've learned a lot from it, but use this kind of structure, explain what happened, what you did, and maybe what you would have done differently or have done differently. So that's kind of an achievement or a failure story. Again, same kind of structure, just practice 3 or 4 of these stories. And those are kind of the answers to the big questions. When the interview is finished, it's never finished. Okay, so I always tell my candidates, the interview starts when you press the button in the lift to, when you get into the lobby of the building of the interview, and it only finishes when you leave that building. Okay, so even if the interviewer says, okay, the interview's finished, let's chill. If you and the interviewer, if you're from the same country and the interview was in English, but you have a different local language, the interviewer might move to your local language. Again, it's still an interview, okay? Don't relax. And I always tell my candidates to prepare 2 or 3 questions. A great question could be, can you give me one tip? You studied at NCAD. Can you tell me about your time at NCAD? Is this something you recommend me to do or not to do? But don't ask something too, and it's okay, this might sound generic, but it's better to be generic than to ask something like, what did I write here? How will the Brexit reflect the economy? Come on, this is a tough question that, professors of economics don't know the answer. So, be realistic also with simple questions that your interviewer can just answer simply, with a smile, and not, I heard that visas are very hard to get. I'm planning on having 3 kids. Do you think my 3rd unborn child will be able to marry a, come on, like, too complicated. Just be quite simple and nice. That's about it. I used to interview, like I said, many years for London Business School, and I've seen many mistakes. This answers the first question, I think. Can I share some mistakes? By the way, this is, I think, my last slide, so you can press some questions if you have some. So I think the 2 worst mistakes are really these, these times, like if someone talks too much or not enough, and I keep, have to encouraging him to give me an example. It's a bit annoying. But if someone talks too much, maybe like me, that's just a bit annoying. So every answer should be around 1.5 minutes, 1.5, 2 maximum, and around 3 minutes for walk me through your resume, something like that. I don't like candidates who don't answer my question. Okay, so I used to always try and ask one very tough question. I really didn't care about the answer, but I used to like to throw the interviewee like to somewhere else. Like I knew he didn't prepare this, and then I used to ask like, have you ever been to London? How would you improve the underground system in London? Now again, very tough question, right? Like, I'm not sure a consultant who works with the London Underground knows how to improve the London Underground system. But the reason here was I just wanted to see some logical thinking and then kind of to throw the candidate out of his, comfort zone. And some candidates used to say, wow, great question. Let me think about it a minute. I used to say, fine, think about it. And I used to say, yeah, maybe coordinate the buses better with the undergrounds, with the tubes. Charge more in rush hour, so maybe there'll be less people, and charge less on low times. Things that make sense. I don't know, make it more clean, have more trains, whatever. Make it easier for tourists to understand where they are. So all these are great answers. Again, choose whichever you want. I remember I had one guy saying, wow, that's a really great question. I really think that the planes will dominate the world or something. I can't remember what he said. Okay, but he just didn't answer the question. So make sure you're answering the question. If I ask you, what would your work colleagues say about you, which is another way to ask what are your strengths, and someone answers me, oh yeah, I love my work colleagues because we play basketball together, doesn't answer the question. Obviously, remember the things at the beginning, don't be late, close your phone, whatever. Make sure you prepare for why this specific school. What happens is a lot of candidates get a number of interviews, and then they prepare, once for 3 interviews. But then when they finish with Chicago and have a MIT interview, they don't have a good answer for why MIT because they forgot to prepare that. So definitely prepare why this specific school. And last but not least, again, this is very specific. A lot of people do research and then they feel they can name drop people which they think might help them for the interview. So, thanks so much, Shimri. And by the way, Michael says hi. It's a bit aggressive, okay? And I've had that a few times. And again, I didn't take points off kind of thing, but that didn't help the candidate, okay? So just be very humble. Again, show that you've done your research, prepare, but again, just be humble. I think that's it. Let's say the interview's done. What can you do now? You're biting your nails like crazy. Maybe you're in the car thinking, oh my God, I did a mistake in question number 3. I could have given that example. It would have been better, and I wouldn't. There's nothing you can do about that now. definitely don't try and send the interviewer, by the way, I forgot to tell you in question number 3, don't do that. If you spoke about something very specific, restaurants in Madrid, and you now Google the restaurant, definitely you can send the interviewer, by the way, the restaurant name is McDonald's, okay? How did you forget? But there's nothing you can do now if you did some kind of mistake, or again, to find out how it went. You can send the interviewer, a little brief message. Thank you so much for the interview. I enjoyed it. I'll share with you my results. Bye-bye. But that's it. And that's all you can do now for 3 to 6 weeks till the answers come in. When the answers come in, you can definitely reach out again to the interviewer. And now that's it. There's no pressure. There's no relationship now beyond friends. And you can say, listen, I got in, do you have any advice? Or I didn't get in. Can you give me any feedback? And now the interviewer has already filled out his report on you. You've already been dinged by the school. There's nothing for him to lose or for you to lose. He can, sometimes you can learn from it and improve something for future interviews. Again, it requires a bit of maturity, both you and the interviewer, because sometimes interviewers won't want to tell you that, they didn't think you did well. And, they won't want to tell you this in your face kind of thing. But maybe you can get a bit of feedback. But again, there's not much you can do after this. And that's it. So I think I was good with timing today, 45 minutes, so we're good. And again, I just wanted to say, TOP-MBA program is an amazing experience for nearly anyone. If you have any doubts, etc., just read about it more. You can check out our site, ARINGO.com, lots and lots of information. If you are ready to change your life, you can always reach out to me. You have my email here, shimriw@aringo.com. Send me your CV, your GMAT score, and I can give you a chances assessment and help you with school selection and things like that. And if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them. So one question is, how different is the MBA interview from a job interview? Well, I think I answered that, but I'll try again. I don't really know, but I know what an MBA interview looks like, and it looks like the top, 9 questions I showed before. So a job interview might have kind of a walk me through your resume thing, and maybe your achievements or weaknesses and strengths. But from there, it would probably be more technical about what did you do, and what do you do, and how is that relevant for my specific company. Again, especially the more experienced and senior jobs you're going after, not like a general job at McDonald's. And an MBA interview will be more about your business achievements. So it won't be specific. So if you're a programmer and going for a programming job, they will probably ask you, how are you good with Java? Do you know to work with databases? But MBA programs don't care about databases in Java. They care about your business achievements. Okay, if there are any more questions, there's one question here on the chat, but I didn't get it. I don't know what certificates help people get into TOP-MBA programs, so that's probably a wrong guy in the chat. I'll wait a few more seconds, but I enjoyed this session very much. I was talking a lot and fast. I hope I did manage to convey most ideas for TOP-MBA programs and their interviews. Nelly, thanks again for organizing this and hosting this session. And I hope to be hearing about your interviews at TOP-MBA programs very shortly.
Thank you very much, Shimri, for sharing your knowledge and expertise. We still have a little bit of time, so I'll ask a question of my own and just giving one last opportunity for our attendees to ask their questions. Okay, I was thinking maybe you can share with us a time when you were really impressed by a candidate, what they do, basically how to impress the interviewer.
Okay, that's a good one, Nelly. Good one. I need to think about that. So I have a lot of examples when I wasn't impressed. And I'll start with those. I've had a 780 GMAT, which didn't impress me. And he mentioned the 780 4 or 5 times in the interview. So maybe the first thing of impressing me is just be humble. Let your results talk for themselves. That means if someone had 3 promotions in 4 years, I don't need them to say, and this is considered super fast. I'm so good. I know you would say that, Nelly. I'm joking. But I think that's impressive for any candidate, right? To have 3 promotions in 4 years, whichever organization you are, that's impressive. So kind of let the facts speak for yourself. And what I would love to see in a very impressive person is that they're doing kind of a job which I would expect their manager to do. They have kind of ownership, which is more than their position. And even if their manager went on maternity leave and the manager manages 5 people, but they are doing the manager's position, or they are volunteering to do something which is bigger than their job scope. So if you're doing more than your job scope, plus you have some extracurricular, which is very interesting, or it can be volunteering, it can be running marathons, whatever. It can be breaking Guinness Book of Records, I don't know, throwing eggs at your head. I don't know what, but it's interesting. Plus at work, you're doing something which is kind of more than I would expect. Plus, if your academics are good, they don't have to be great. That's a strong applicant.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to break some Guinness Book of Records things now?
I'm sorry?
Maybe not. Are you going to break some Guinness Book of Records?
Yeah, I'll try before applying for an MBA.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting to hear about your experience. We don't have any more questions. So
we had some good ones.
Yeah. Any final words before saying goodbye to our attendees?
Good luck. Prepare. This whole MBA application thing takes months and months. The GMAT can take 3, 4, 5, 6 months. The applications can take 3 months, and then the interviews can come very quickly. So prepare for all of these stages well in advance, and that's it.
Thank you again, Shimri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. We wish you best of luck in your academic journey.